I will call now the last speaker, but before I do, I wish to make a clarification. We had hoped, and Zachary had hoped, to speak on the other side of this motion. However, we made the decision that it would be more unfair to empty chair CUSU than to find a speaker who would be arguing against the motion on simply a word technicality. We tried very hard to find a speaker whose heart, as well as their head, was on that side of the House, but we were not successful. And therefore, I call Zachary Marsh as our last speaker on this motion. Zachary is a second-year student reading history at Robinson College. He's an independent college councillor and one of the organisers of the CUSU Disaffiliation Campaign at Robinson College. He was also a candidate in the recent NUS delegate elections. He won this slot through open audition. Zachary, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'd just like to start with a brief preemptive apology. I literally had an hour before I came along to this debate in which to actually plan this, which I spent a lot of time eating dinner. So I hope you'll appreciate that I'm not going to be anywhere near as eloquent as the guys who've spoken before me. And I thank Gabriel for the speech. I do think it says a huge amount that we couldn't find a single person willing to take my slot and defend CUSU's abysmal record tonight. I'm going to take a slightly different tack to what Henry did. And I hope no one feels that I hijacked this debate by being too technical. I'm not a supporter of CUSU or this side, but I'm on this side of the House tonight because I feel this motion in many ways misses the wider, more troubling point about that institution. The motion is that CUSU does not represent students. But that suggests an impossible disconnect because ultimately CUSU is a students' union. It is run by students, its officers are students. Those who engage in its campaigns, who support its work, are students. Mine opponents have attacked CUSU as unrepresentative. What they have not emphasised enough is that CUSU's problem is not in many ways that disconnect, the disconnect it has with ordinary students like those gathered here tonight. This is concerning, yes, but what is more concerning is how CUSU, rather than excluding the student voice, has become a platform for one particular set of students to act in our name. CUSU has been monopolised by a subset of the student body as their personal political playground. In an ideal world, it would not simply be enough to broaden participation in CUSU to all students, to diversify the opinions of its officers. We would first need to break the oligarchy that has emerged in Cambridge student politics, whereby CUSU serves the interest of a narrow constituency incredibly well, and one that is completely out of step and out of touch with you and I. So we're going to have to, this is where I ran out of time to actually write anything beforehand. So I'm going to sort of touch on 3 points tonight. I'm going to talk about that oligarchy and what that means for CUSU and why it represents a certain group of students really well to the detriment of the rest of us. I'm going to talk about how actually a huge amount of that is our fault as a student body because of the apathy that we enable them to utilise for their own goals. And then I'm going to talk about very briefly at the end where that leaves us as a student body trying to make CUSU and trying to make student politics work for us. So the first thing to mention is just sort of what this group of students that have control of CUSU is like. It's an echo chamber, essentially. It is a radical group of individuals who run the entire breadth of student campaigns, from divestment through to various other issues, that are, as has been referenced throughout the night, sort of a clique. They know each other very well. They don't tolerate dissent. They can't deal with people who share 99% of their political views, but just happen to have a slightly different take at the end. And what that means is that there is an atmosphere within CUSU that is very, very adept at speaking for that particular group of students, because they're the only ones allowed in the room. They're the only ones that are able to get a seat at the table to start with, and those students, and I know some of them, and some of them are perfectly nice people when you're not talking politics with them, but they are the ones that CUSU represents perfectly, and the rest of us are left out as a result. I experienced this firsthand recently. I ran in the NUS elections, didn't do as well as Peter, but you know, I came sort of respectfully middle of the pack. But what immediately happened, as was referenced, sort of alluded to by Emily, was that if you wanted to run for NUS delegate this time, you had to scroll to the bottom of a 2-page email that was all about the successes of CUSU to date to find out where the link was. The exact purpose of this, and many other things, being that the people who are supposed to sign up to be nominated for these elections, to run in these elections, and be elected in these elections are people that CUSU has already essentially pre-approved, that they already know, and that they already want to come from this group of students that CUSU is really orientated towards representing. That happened with the PTE elections last year. The sitting CUSU president essentially told the newly elected SABS officers to invite their friends, didn't have an open nominations process, and then had an election where 99.9% of students in this university hadn't even had the chance to get their names put on the ballot. This is a group that literally rigs elections and rigs our students' union for their own ends, and they're very powerful because of it, and they're very good at defending their own interests. Now, what I think that manifests itself in some really disturbing ways. So the OTC thing that happened recently, this bizarre thing where there was an attempt to ban all military societies within the university, got watered down last minute, and I admit it was something of a victory. But what that actually manifests itself as was a huge preamble in which CUSU decided to exert their own ideological views on the entire student body, decrying militarism, decrying our armed forces, decrying the service that men, women, and individuals who identify as other genders have not actually just sort of dismissing their service to our nation. And that was really hurtful to many people I know who either serve in the armed forces or who have family members there, because CUSU and this group have asserted, as I say, their views on the university. That sort of covers the oligarchy side of things. So now I think we need to turn to a big problem, which has been alluded to tonight, but I think we actually need to grapple with head on. And that is the fact that it's actually our fault. The fact is that CUSU, as has been mentioned, does represent us. It is the Cambridge University Students' Union. And we all have a vote, and Henry seems to think that's a powerful tool. Respectfully, I disagree for the reasons I've almost already alluded to. That is a con designed to suggest to us that actually if we wanted to do something about the way the system was run, we could. We could not be further from the truth when we actually look at the group of people who control this and run it in their favour. But that is not to say that it is not enough to vote. Out of interest, how many people did vote in the NUS elections that we had the other week? Congratulations, I think about 25% of all the voters are here tonight. That's really reassuring. Maybe democracy is not dead after all. But we've got to get to grips with the fact that people are going to speak in our names, whether we like it or not. And actually, it's hypocritical. Yes?
I think there's a really important distinction that hasn't been made tonight that ought to just be made right briefly now. And it's the fact that just because CUSU exists as an institution to represent students does not mean that they represent students. That's a really, really important division that absolutely has to be made and hasn't been made thus far tonight.
Respectfully, I've got to completely disagree, because actually, at the places where this matters, the exact opposite is the case. So when CUSU goes to sit down, they don't say, actually, you know, we're representing the sort of 1,000 students that actually voted, which is like, what, did we say, sort of 10, 20% of the university? They say that they're speaking for all of us. We are the mandate, we are the soapbox that they stand on to impart their radical views, and we are the reason that they get a foot in the door and a seat at the table. So actually to say that they don't represent students, and I might agree with you that actually when it comes down to our opinions, they don't. But the fundamental fact is that they sit on a platform that they're abusing, which is us. We are the platform that they're taking. And it is hypocritical. Yeah, far away.
For a microphone.
When they start commenting on international politics, I did not vote for that. I did not vote for them to start putting their pokey fingers into complex, messy pie of politics.
Well, thank you for the alliteration. I think we all enjoyed that. No, Ollie, I completely agree with you, but as I say, it doesn't change the fact they do it anyway. And that's the real problem, is that they are getting involved in our names in a lot of issues where we don't want them involved. But that doesn't change the fact that as far as the rest of the world is concerned, when Cambridge University Students' Union comes up in the newspapers or in the media, they don't stop to think, oh, look, these people were elected with a 13% turnout. They think that actually they're speaking for us. And CUSU derives a huge amount of power from that fact and abuses that power for their own ends. As I said, I think it's hypocritical to complain about CUSU afterwards. I've got a lot of friends. I was speaking to an OTC friend who'd never voted in a CUSU election in his life, who mentioned to me that wasn't this atrocious, and I agree with him. But I said, what have you done about it? And he'd never engaged with CUSU before, and he still has no intention of doing it. And actually, if you want to change things, we've got to start voting, and more importantly, we've got to start voting these people out. And then I'm just going to briefly wrap up at the end. As I say, apologies if I've rambled. It's because my preparation time was pretty limited. To where that leaves us. I think, sadly, some people say I'm a pessimist, but I think I'm a realist. I think the problem that we've got here is you've got a largely apathetic student body. Even if all of you guys were invigorated by the debate tonight and voted in every single CUSU election that ever came across again, that would have no impact on the general turnout within a university with literally thousands of students. And what is going to continue to happen, therefore, is that this group that have monopolized student politics for their own radical agenda is going to continue to use the platform of our students' union to espouse their views. So what options do we have? It was mentioned very briefly by Gabriel at the start that I ran a disaffiliation campaign within Robinson at the end of last term. We lost by 4 votes out of 160, which is better than most PTEs can get when they actually run for office in the entire university. What we've got to do, I'm afraid, is to pull the soapbox out from underneath these people, to deny them the legitimacy which they claim to have simply because they're elected by a fraction of us on all of our behalf. If we don't do that, then nothing will be changed. We've got to send a message to CUSU the only way we can, which is actually to just get out and make clear that they don't speak in our names, because the very existence of CUSU and the very institution itself is so corrupted at this point and so monopolized by one discrete group of individuals that sadly we have no hope of clawing that back. So I would urge you all to vote against the motion, to accept that CUSU does represent us, but that it really, really shouldn't. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zachary, for that speech and also for doing it at such short notice. Before we finish up today, a little housekeeping. Tomorrow we will be debating whether this House regrets New Labour with Sir Vince Cable and Tom Newton-Dunn. Next Thursday we'll be hosting a Brexit debate too. So if you enjoyed this and are not a member, you know what to do. But tonight in this House we will vote with our feet. As you leave this chamber, please walk through the lobby as to your preference. If you agree with the motion, vote aye. If you do not, vote no. If you remain undecided, vote for abstention. The results will be announced shortly in the bar along with the winners of the ice cream. So do stick around to find out who's won. The motion is that this House believes CUSU does not represent students. Thank you and good night.